we want to do it all at the same time, which is the problem. We need to start rethinking about how we show up and being the best whatever we are at the time. So the best worker when you're at work, the best parent when you're at home, and almost segmenting life a little bit just so that you can survive and survive without this guilt. Because if you're trying to show up and be the best parent when you're at work and checking, the kids' daycare pictures all day long, or you're not being the best worker, and that's where you're at right then, you know? So I think being able to identify and show up intentionally with where you're at in any given moment is the first step to battling that guilt. But it's a constant battle for everyone. It really is.
I think so as well. Like, I don't have any children, but I know when I'm around children or even some of the women I've dated, they find that. And like, if you look at like when you mentioned burnout, and then when I look at some of the women that I'm around, even though their children are older, let's say in their teens or maybe their early 20s or their mid 20s, they still run into that where they're thinking, okay, I only could do certain things until my children are this age.
Mhm.
I'm going to wait until my children is that age. And they're feeling this anxiety overwhelmed because they don't realize until maybe later on that, oh my God, Jill, 5 years have passed. Oh my God, Jill, 10 years have passed. And it's like, Jill, where did the time go? But when you look
Totally.
up, your children went from diapers to needing you to help them with their homework to they're hardly home,
Yeah.
right? So, like, speak to the women. Like, how is it that if they want to avoid burnout in, let's say, being a mother and jumping back into a relationship, if that's their thing,
Mm.
how do they stay grounded enough to say, hey, yes, what Jill's saying is correct. I need to figure out who I am and what I'm going to be day to day. But there's times where I look up and I don't realize years, not weeks, have passed by.
Yeah. And it's really common, right? Because we're always that um, if when, right? We're if when thinkers. So if I win the lottery, if I get the promotion, then I can spend the money on this. If the kids grow up, or when the kids grow up, they can do sports activities on their own, then I'll have a little bit more time for myself or whatever. And the antidote to that is really just staying in the moment. It's mindfulness in its essence. But if we take a look at it from the lens of mindful self-care, that's what I like to recommend specifically to moms. It's a buzzword. Everyone is aware of what self-care is or isn't. Like, is it bubble baths and massages, or is it runs and, like 75 hard? Who knows? But the thing is, it is what it is for you. Self-care is literally taking care of yourself. And it seems impossible. I have a lot of moms that say, like, yeah, I get it, but like, when, how am I supposed to do this? And you're absolutely right. Their thought process, which isn't wrong, and I totally get where it's coming from, is that I'll have to wait until before I can do things for myself. And while, yes, the reality is that in different seasons of motherhood and different seasons of what your child needs, you will have different availabilities, you'll have different capacities. Um, just like with work, you have busy seasons and slow seasons, right? Just like with your relationship, you have ups and downs. The same thing happens as you go through these seasons of parenting. But if you can create a base through line for yourself of, I am the type of person who, fill in the blank, takes care of herself, prioritizes rest, drink lots of water. Choose one thing to start that makes you feel like you've got a bit of control, and the thing has to actually motivate you or make you happy or give you some kind of benefit. It can't be something wishy-washy, or it won't matter enough to you to keep it going or to see the benefits. But starting small, because oftentimes it's all or nothing is the way that we think. And that's not necessarily the answer. I always use this as an example in that it's something for me that I choose to do every day is learn a new language. And I have that app, right? Duolingo, that I can literally go on for 1 to 2 minutes a day. And as long as I'm consistent, now I'm noticing I'm starting to think in that language. And I've only been at it 3 months, right? So if I saw a donkey on a show the other day, and I thought in my head, yella, which is the Scottish word for donkey. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy that I'm having that much progress, even though I'm only spending 2 minutes a day, right? And so recognizing that you can still work towards a goal or claim some time back for yourself or keep your relationships with your friends even when motherhood is taking over. It's just you can't do the same quantity that you might want to. And so it's a balancing act.
Is that a realization that is difficult for some mothers when they realize that maybe I can't do it the way I want to do it, but I have to find a compromise to actually be able to do it?
Hmm. And the interesting thing too is that sometimes I'll flip it and think and offer this sort of reframe for moms is that if you have a goal that you want to, let's say, run a marathon or start a business or go back to school or whatever, but you can't in your season of life make that happen right now. That doesn't mean you don't start the steps. It doesn't mean you don't, let's use the example of running a marathon, which I've never done, by the way, but just in theory. Um, it doesn't mean you can't buy a pair of running shoes that make you like they're bright, sparkly pink or that make you smile, like whatever speaks to you. That doesn't mean that you can't go out and push your baby in a stroller and then start up to jogging or whatever you do to train for a marathon, however that process works. That doesn't mean that you can't start reading books and listening to podcasts and meeting other people, joining those communities who are interested in that thing. And it doesn't need to take a lot of time, but those are all things that you can do before you run a marathon, right? You're not going to wake up and do the marathon. Same thing with any goal. There are steps you can take, and even if they're small, by doing those small steps slowly while you're in a phase of life where you don't have a lot of capacity for yourself, you're building the foundation so that when your kids are at the age where they're at school and you have some extra time, or they can go on sleepovers, bam, you're not starting from zero. You're starting from 50% because you've built that foundation. So it's all worthwhile progress. It's kind of that analogy of the iceberg, right? Like you're working underneath the water until such time that you can break through and really rise.